Chapter 724. Not long after Yang Chendong left, Har'er also left the Tatar camp. Nearly 1,000 Tatar cavalrymen left with him. About 200 of them had received Lord Agar Dorj's kindness, and they were following the young master to repay his kindness. As for the rest, they did not want to join the Han army, or they were simply tired of war. Su He kept his word and did not make things difficult for them. Instead, he allowed them to take their war horses and weapons and leave the camp. However, if one day these people could not continue and wanted to return, they would have to start all over again. A day later, Su He brought about 6,000 Tatar cavalrymen and joined the mercenary army. At this point, the battle had come to an end. After several bloody battles, 8,000 of the 45,000 Tatar cavalrymen were killed and nearly 20,000 were wounded. Nearly 7,000 managed to escape, and in the end, more than 10,000 were captured or surrendered. On the other hand, the mercenary army had about 2,500 people who died or were seriously injured and could not return to the army. There were still more than 2,000 lightly wounded soldiers left behind. This was a great victory for them, no matter how one looked at it. Yang Chendong did not go back on his word and allowed his 4 regiments to replenish the soldiers from the captives and surrendered soldiers. After this was done, he selected some elite soldiers from the remaining Tatar cavalrymen to form a new Tatar cavalry regiment. The regiment commander was Su He, and the number of soldiers was the same as the Nuzhan cavalry regiment, 3,000. As for the remaining soldiers, they were incorporated into the newly expanded logistics regiment to replenish the soldiers. First City. News of the battle outside continued to pour into the city. The biggest change was that one could see captured Tatar cavalrymen and injured Tatar cavalrymen being sent into the city almost every day. Every time they appeared, the people in the city would talk about it. Although the citizens of the city weren't very sure about the number of mercenaries, they knew that there were about 10,000 to less than 20,000 mercenaries. Facing 45,000 elite Tatar cavalrymen with less than 20,000 people, many people were worried at the beginning. After all, the difference in strength was too great. Even if some people had seen the mercenaries' training methods, they still did not think that it would be easy for them to win. However, just as most people were not optimistic about their chances, reports of victory were sent into the city again and again. Under intentional propaganda, the more than 10,000 people in the city were clearly aware of the situation at the front lines, as well as how much the mercenaries had obtained in each battle. Seeing that they had won one battle after another, the people in the city were encouraged. They had more confidence in the mercenaries and were more determined to live in the city. Of course, there were 2 sides to everything. Some people were happy while others were unhappy. For example, some of the grassland youths in the city who wanted to join the mercenary army. They thought that if the front line was tight, they would have a chance to quickly rise and become a member of the mercenary army. However, news of victory kept coming in, especially when a large number of captives and wounded were sent into the city and passed through the streets in front of them. They couldn't help but start to worry. With so many captives, would the mercenaries choose to conscript? Would they still have a chance to join the army and create a better future? Amidst such worries, even better news came. Agar Dorj escaped, and the Tatar army was defeated. General Su He finally chose to surrender and joined the mercenary army. The beginning city was safe. It was safe. When this news spread to the city, many people went to the streets to celebrate. Only those ambitious young men who wanted to join the army were missing. They were afraid that they had no hope. After understanding the treatment of the mercenaries, the thing they yearned for the most was to join this army. At the same time, they could also earn a better tomorrow for themselves. After discussing, they gathered together and decided in private that when the god of war returned from the front line, they would jointly request to join the mercenary army and ask the god of war to give them an explanation and a chance. Because so many people gathered, such a matter could not be hidden from the members of the security bureau in the city. At first, they thought that something big was going to happen. However, after understanding the matter, they did not know whether to laugh or cry. In the end, they reported the matter to the director of the security bureau in the beginning city, who was also in charge of intelligence in the grassland, Feng Liang. Feng Liang was one of the old people in the security bureau. When it was first established, he was chosen by the director, Yang San, and transferred to his command. Facts also proved that Director Yang San's judgment of people was still very accurate. Feng Liang withstood strict training, and after becoming an official member, he performed well and completed several difficult jobs in succession. Finally, he became a marquis and the person in charge of the security bureau in the grassland. This time, the beginning city was newly built, so it naturally needed some elite soldiers to assist. Feng Liang came here again and was responsible for the intelligence and security work in the city. He had also spent a lot of time walking through the streets and alleys of the beginning city. He knew the situation and terrain of the city like the back of his hand. Under Feng Liang's efforts, the security bureau in the city was successfully established. Its members were scattered all over the city to ensure that no matter what happened, no one would be able to escape their eyes. This time, so many young and strong grassland men suddenly gathered together. How could they escape his eyes and ears? He hurriedly sent people to inquire about and understand the situation. In the end, he got such a result, which made him feel like he did not know what to say. Logically speaking, it was a good thing that the young man wanted to join the army. At least it proved that the army was popular. This was what many forces and armies wanted to see. However, the mercenary army paid attention to the elite route of a strong army. The sixth young master personally said that he did not ask for the number of mercenaries. He only needed them to have enough combat power. Only in this way would the treatment of soldiers be higher, and they would be more flexible and mobile in the war. As a result, the pressure on the logistical support would also be much less. The route of a strong army had proven its feasibility with facts. Since the establishment of the mercenary army, which time did they not win with fewer people? It was also because of the small number of troops that they were more flexible and mobile when they fought the war. Feng Liang, who understood this policy very well, could understand the feelings of these young and strong grassland men. He could also feel the benefits of the sixth young master's policy. For a moment, he was caught in a dilemma. Since he knew what the request of these young and strong men was, there was no need to let them meet the sixth young master. This kind of small matter could be solved by him. How about this? Choose a few representatives from these young men who want to join the army. I will meet them alone. After some consideration, Feng Liang came up with a solution. That was to use the militia to solve the problem at hand. This way, they would not need to take up the quota and resources of the mercenary army. It should be the best of both worlds. All they needed to do was to pay a certain amount of silver every month. In order to build an intelligence network, the thing that the security bureau did not lack the least was silver. This amount of silver was still something they could solve. Feng Liang made a decision. He even imitated the model of establishing the militia and reserve in Qiqian City. This solution was indeed effective. After meeting the representatives in private, the two sides reached an agreement to allow these men to enter the ranks of the militia of the first city. As long as they had the opportunity to pass the assessment, they would be able to enter the regular frontline combat forces. Before that, what they needed to do was to be responsible for the security in the beginning city. Once they found any suspicious people, they could keep an eye on them. If necessary, they could inform the army in the city and cooperate with them to suppress the enemy. After doing this, not only could they get a reasonable name for law enforcement, but more importantly, they could also get some silver every month. It was tentatively set at 2 taels of silver every month. There would be an additional reward for meritorious service. 2 taels of silver was naturally nothing in front of the regular mercenary army. However, for ordinary people, it was already an income. At this moment, both sides were very satisfied. A gathering of people that needed to trouble Yang Chendong was declared over before it happened. What was even more unexpected was that it did not take long for these grassland men, who were persuaded by Feng Liang to join the militia, to really make a great contribution. Yang Chendong, who had safely returned to the city, did not know about everything that Feng Liang had done in private. However, these things would be formed into a secret document and sent to him for review. However, no one knew whether he would value it or not. For example, Yang Chendong did not pay attention to the matter reported by Feng Liang. Instead, he focused on the eastern area of the beginning city. The scouts had sent back news that the 3 divisions of the Lengfeng division were already on their way to transport the goods from Qiqian city that had just been received from Sea Town. They would be able to rush back to the beginning city in at most 2 days. The previous battle was just to establish his prestige and to stabilize his foothold. Now, it seemed that everything was going smoothly. After this battle, not only did he show his prestige, but he also strengthened the army. This also gave Yang Chendong more confidence. Whether it was to defend the city or to fight, he also had more choices. However, if one wanted to conquer a place, war was only one of the methods. Another important method was economic occupation. As long as one controlled the economy of a place, it was equivalent to controlling its artery. Only then would one's influence be more far-reaching and one would be more powerful. Among the goods transported by the 3 divisions of the Lengfeng division, there were many goods that were hard currencies. This was also a good opportunity to strengthen the economic strength of the beginning city again. This was also something that Yang Chendong valued very much. Therefore, on the morning of the 3rd day, when the 3 divisions of the Lengfeng division escorted more than 500 carriages and appeared outside the city, he personally went up to greet them. While thanking them for their hard work, he also listened to the work reports from Division Commander Wu Sheng and Political Commissar Chen Bo. Chapter 725. Ever since they left the first city and headed to the new Ergon city, they had openly raised the banner of the mercenary army. At the same time, they attracted the attention of the Baiming guards. Then, at the downstream of the Songhua River, outside the Jianzhou left guard, they had a big battle with the 3,000 cavalrymen of the Baiming guards and won a great victory. They had made a great contribution in this battle, and because of this, they gained the name of the mercenary army. The Baiming guards became more honest, and a logistics route that belonged to the mercenary army was opened up. On the way back from Sea Town to pick up the goods, there were no more Ming army soldiers to make things difficult for them. There were only some scouts following them from afar, inquiring about their situation. Good. Hearing that he had established his prestige with just one battle, Yang Chendong was naturally satisfied. The Ming army was mostly made up of Han people. This was his route. If he could avoid hurting them, it would be best not to hurt them. As long as the other party was honest, he did not mind creating a peaceful border for them. As for who wanted to attack the Han people, he would take care of it. Of course, if the Ming army was smart, things would naturally develop normally. If they wanted to make things difficult for the mercenaries, he would not introduce them to teach them a lesson. He would let them know who they could not afford to offend and who they could not have any ideas about. The 3 divisions of Lengfeng had returned. They escorted more than 500 carriages of various sizes and a large number of goods. Since these were things that Yang Chendong needed, Crimson City would naturally provide them with all their strength. There were food, drinks, clothes, and all kinds of things. It could be said that they had everything. Not only did they bring a lot of goods this time, it was enough to make the first city a commercial city on the grasslands. At the same time, there was also a talent who came with the army. His surname was Yu and his name was Mian. His father was the first city lord of Crimson City, Lord Yu Qian. Yu Mian had a reputation in history, and his abilities were not ordinary. It was just that Yang Chendong did not appear, and in the end, Yu Qian ended up being beheaded. As his son, it was natural that he would not have a good ending. Now, things were different. Yu Qian was under the protection of Yang Chendong, and he had even handed over the management of such an important headquarters city to him. Naturally, his son would be able to do things much more smoothly. Yuan's arrival was not because his father, Yu Qian, wanted him to make his presence known. In fact, Yuan was already participating in the management of Crimson City. As the saying goes, one does not need to rely on one's own talents. Yu Qian was an upright gentleman. As long as he believed that something was right, he would not care about the opinions of others. Since his son was capable, why couldn't he be put in an important position? Yuan, who already had an official position in Crimson City and had begun to participate in the management, was summoned to Origin City after being recommended. This was Yang Chendong's order. Such a large city always needed someone to manage it, especially when it was just built. It could be said that there were a lot of things to do. If the person who came was not capable, wouldn't it be a waste of his energy? Finding a suitable city lord was a problem that Yang Chendong had been thinking about. He handed the matter of the candidates to Crimson City and asked them to report it. Among them was Yuan's name. In the end, he became the person that Yang Chendong wanted. When he saw Yuan, it was at the Yang residence in Origin City. The largest residence in this city was Yang Chendong's residence. In the pavilion in the back garden, Yang Chendong met Yuan, who was in his early 30s. The reason why he chose this place was to show his closeness. Only those who were chosen by Yang Chendong would be able to appear in such a private occasion. On the other hand, if it was someone unfamiliar, they could only meet in the living room. Yuan greets the sixth young master. After being brought to the back garden by Beta Persei, Yuan became excited when he saw the back of Yang Chendong, who was drinking tea alone from afar. He was still far away, but he had already bowed respectfully. Come, have a seat. Yang Chendong laughed without even turning his head. Then, he waved his hand and greeted Yuan casually. The more casual he was with you, the more he expressed his trust in you. Yuan naturally walked to Yang Chendong's side with a look of fear and trepidation. Then, he nervously and carefully sat on the empty chair opposite him. One shouldn't think that Yuan's performance was exaggerated. But for those who lived in Crimson City, there was no one who didn't know Yang Chendong and the sixth young master. For example, Yu Qian was the first to be kidnapped, so he naturally had a conflict in his heart. Coupled with his feelings for the great Ming dynasty, it was basically impossible for him to work for other forces. Fortunately, Yang Chendong had never forced him. Otherwise, given Yu Qian's unyielding character, it would not be strange for him to commit suicide. He seemed to know what kind of person Yu Qian was, what kind of nature he had, and what kind of character he had. From the beginning, Yang Chendong did not intend to use force. He just let Yu Qian wander around the city. Then, under the influence of what he saw and heard, the environment really changed Yu Qian's mind. When he saw that Yang Chendong really wanted to change the people's lives, enrich the country and strengthen the people, and even create a dynasty that was more powerful than the great Ming dynasty, his thoughts also changed little by little. During the day, he walked on the streets and observed his surroundings. He felt the vitality in Crimson City and the sincere and brilliant smiles on the faces of the people. At night, he tossed and turned in bed, unable to fall asleep. He thought about what kind of impact the development of Crimson City would have on the great Ming dynasty and whether the development of such a city would be good or bad. Rather than saying that Yu Qian was loyal to the emperor of the great Ming dynasty, it was better to say that he was loyal to the people of the great Ming dynasty. By the same logic, he would help whoever could give the people a better life. After observing for many days, he confirmed that the development of Crimson City was for the good of the people. It could let them live a better life, obtain more respect, and obtain more fairness. He was surprised to find that this was not the life he wanted. The life and world he wanted? The life he had been pursuing all this time? In the end, reality defeated him and changed Yu Qian. He finally decided to use his own ability to do something for the city. Then, he was appointed to an important position and became the lord of a city. Facts also proved that he was indeed capable. Not only in military matters, but also in the people's lives. After he was given great power, his performance would only improve. Facts further proved that Yang Chendong was right to put Yu Qian in an important position. Under his guidance, Crimson City entered an era of rapid development. With Yang Chendong's help in various aspects, it quickly became the largest city in the Yang Dynasty. It created countless wealth for the development of the entire Yang Dynasty and laid a solid foundation. Yu Qian was contributing to the development of Crimson City. Of course, his family was duty-bound as well. At this time, Yu Mian also became an official and became a capable subordinate under his father. He was a capable assistant. His performance was also remarkable. In the end, he came to the first city and became the person personally appointed by Yang Chendong. At this time, Yu Mian sighed with emotion about his experience. He could also feel the great responsibility on his shoulders. He had even begun to outline the future development plan of the first city in his heart. He was thinking that he must build the first city into the second Crimson City and continue its glory. Compared to Yu Mian's nervousness and excitement, Yang Chendong was very calm. He did not talk about business right away. Instead, he casually asked about the matters in Crimson City, especially if the higher-ups and officials could fulfill their duties. Yu Mian, don't be nervous. Just say whatever you want to say. You also know that I'm not in Crimson City all year round, so I don't know much about it. And where there are people, there will be fights. I know this better than you. If you say that your father is the city lord, no one will object to what he says and does, then I don't believe it. With a smile on his face, Yang Chendong directly sealed off the path of retreat, as if saying, I can see that your father is an honest man, so I hope that you're also an honest man. If there's anything you want to say, then say it to me. Originally, he wanted to sing praises for Crimson City, but suddenly, after Yang Chendong said this, Yu Mian knew that he could hold back those words in his stomach. But at the same time, he was very happy that the sixth young master was so considerate of him. Such a person was worthy of others' loyalty. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he thought for a while before saying, Sixth young master, just as you said, there will be fights where there are people. The higher-ups in Crimson City are indeed not a tight group. There are some people who have doubts about my father's decisions. But all in all, this is just a difference in opinion and a desire for power. At least up to now, no one has caused any major trouble. After all, with sixth young master's reputation and the security bureau's people secretly watching, as well as the Special Inspector Bureau's Lord Shen Yu's guarantee on the surface, everything is still peaceful. Yu Mian was being careful and polite, and what he reported was all good news. However, Yang Chendong was not an ordinary person. He could still hear the hidden meaning in his words. Even if everything was peaceful now, it was unknown what would happen in the future. What's going on? Tell me the details. This time, Yang Chendong had already put away his smile, and his expression became much more serious. If he didn't do this, he was afraid that it wouldn't be enough to make Yu Mian tell the truth. It's fine. Yu Mian seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he shut his mouth. And this had already angered Yang Chendong. Then. Alright, you can rest for now. In a few days, there will be a carriage that will go to Sea Town to pick up supplies. You can go back to Crimson City with the carriage. After saying this, Yang Chendong slowly stood up. Since Yu Mian didn't want to tell him the truth, he would let him go back. There was no need for him to stay by his side if he couldn't confide in him, let alone hand over such an important city like the first city to him. Chapter 726. He actually asked him to go back. This was obviously a sign of anger. Yu Mian was frightened at this moment. When he came, many people's eyes were red with jealousy. His father had high hopes for him, hoping that he would be able to gain a foothold in the origin city and create a glory similar to the Crimson City. Even when he left, he patted his chest and almost made a military order. It could be said that his family had given him too much hope for his arrival. But now, he was actually going to return empty-handed. One could imagine what would happen if he didn't do anything and went back with his tail between his legs. At that time, not to mention himself, even his father would be implicated. Then, he would become the true sinner of the Yu family. The consequences would be unimaginable and unimaginable. Yu Mian waited for Yang Chendong to leave the pavilion. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly shouted, "Sixth young master, please wait a moment." Stopping in his tracks, Yang Chendong turned around. "What is it? Do you have something to tell me?" "Yes. Yes." This time, Yu Mian lowered his head. Regardless of whether he was willing or not, he had no choice now. "Then speak." Yang Chendong's expression was calm. "Yes, sixth young master. With the continuous development of Crimson City, there are indeed some people who have become restless and dissatisfied. The most representative of them is Yang Taizhu. This is not his real name. It is a name he changed after coming to Crimson City. His father thinks that this name is more resounding and is in line with our original intention of conquering the world with martial arts. And his father is Crimson City's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yang Shan. Since he had already spoken, there was no way out for Yu Mian. Thus, he revealed everything he knew about the situation. Yang Taizhu is a very decisive person. He also has some tricks up his sleeves. Relying on the fact that he is Minister Yang's son, he bullies the good and oppresses the good. Many people who have money and power without any background have been oppressed by him. Not only that, but he also secretly kept the new products produced by the factories in Crimson City, using the excuse that they were not up to standard for his personal use, and then sold them to foreign merchants at a cheaper price. Sixth young master, as you know, the quality of our Red Nest City's goods is excellent, and the variety of them is wonderful. The demand has always exceeded the supply, and as long as these goods are out of the sea, they can be sold for a good price on land. Because of this, the entire Yang family has become rich. Yang Taizhu used most of this money to establish connections. They used this money to bribe and rope in some officials of various levels in Crimson City, causing their network to grow larger and larger. I'm afraid that it won't be long before these people join forces. They will be able to restrict my father's orders. After saying these words, Yu Mian lowered his head. He knew that he had thrown a huge bomb today. Who knew how many people would be punished after this, and how many heads would fall to the ground because of this? Yang Chendong had been listening quietly, and there was no change in his expression. But in fact, his heart was already overflowing with anger. Everything Yang Taizhu had done, in the words of future generations, was smuggling, and this was stealing from him. Then, he used his money to bribe and collude with some officials. It could be imagined that in the long run, once the net was large enough and the energy was strong enough, the first one to be overthrown would be City Lord Yu Qian, who had faithfully carried out his orders. Perhaps it would be his turn next. To think that he was still fighting a bloody battle on the front lines, risking his life in order to seize more territory as quickly as possible, liberate more people, and accumulate more power and influence. But if the rear was unstable, wouldn't everything he was doing now be a wedding dress for others? If that was the case, he would instead become a puppet. Just the thought of it was laughable. Of course, Yang Chendong wouldn't believe Yu Mian's words. Who knew if Yu Mian, who appeared to be honest and considerate, spoke in such a way because he wanted to eliminate his dissidents? Besides, Crimson City was his base camp. There were too many of his trusted aides there. Would those people turn a blind eye to such a thing? With doubts in his heart, Yang Chendong returned to the pavilion and sat down. Tell me. Yang Taizhu is so lawless. Does no one from the Security Bureau care about him? Could it be that the Special Inspector Bureau is useless? And those people from the military, will they turn a blind eye to it? It was precisely because he had left behind these forces and manpower that Yang Chendong was extremely at ease with Crimson City. He didn't believe that some people and some things could be bribed with money. Couldn't they tell that once he was angered, it would be useless no matter how much money they took out? This. Yuan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked up at Yang Chendong with a troubled expression. Say what you have to say. Don't hesitate. Beta Persei, call Tiger's mane over. Yang Chendong stared intently at Yuan's face as he roared outside. Beta Persei left in a hurry, at a loss. Yang Chendong looked at Yuan and said, "All right, there are no outsiders here now. Tell me everything you know. Even if you say something wrong, I won't blame you. Furthermore, the matter of you saying something wrong won't spread." Now that things had come to this, Yuan had no way out. At that moment, he seemed to have made a decision as he said, "Yes, sixth young master. This is the situation. This young Taiju is very capable. He first would one of Fifth Madam's personal maidservants, Lin Lin, and married her. This way, he would have Fifth Madam's support. Then, he joined forces with the director of Crimson City's Security Bureau, Chen Shuquan. The sixth young master definitely knows this person. This person doesn't speak much, but as his name suggests, he likes power very much. It can be said that he hit it off with Yang Taiju. With the support of the Security Bureau, he naturally gets twice the result with half the effort. As for the Special Inspector Bureau, he definitely won't find trouble with Fifth Madam. My father once doubted it, but soon, Lin Lin personally appeared in the city lord's office. After that, I heard from my father that Lin Lin said that the entire Crimson City belongs to the Yang family. The Yang family's madam only took some money from her family. Is there a need to inform outsiders and use outsiders to criticize her? There's no need to talk about the military. Now that there's a political department, Leng Song and Commander Gao Xiong are thinking of how to compete with them. How could he possibly intervene in the local affairs? Wouldn't that be handing over his weakness to others? Therefore, they simply turn a blind eye. As for the other officials, they don't dare to interfere. With the idea that mortals suffer when immortals fight, they hide as much as they can. As long as these people don't provoke them, they will also turn a blind eye. Upon hearing Yuan's explanation, Yang Chendong widened his eyes. No one dares to interfere. Didn't the Yuan family do anything? Yuan Xiaoyu is my future sixth madam. Didn't she stand up? It could be heard that although this was a questioning voice, there was a hint of trembling in his voice. It was unknown if it was because of anger or disappointment. Sixth madam? Ever since you left Crimson City, Sixth Madam led the publicity team to perform for the nearly 5 million Han people. She said that she wanted to change the views and mentality of these people as soon as possible, so she hasn't been in Crimson City. And these things have only happened in the past few months. Sixth Madam doesn't know about it. Yuan knew that this was very likely related to a girl's future happiness and the future of a large family. Of course, he had to explain it clearly. Upon hearing this, Yang Chendong's expression looked better. But soon, he sneered. The Yang family's money is indeed used by the family. There's no need for outsiders to interfere, but the problem is that she's just a maidservant. What right does she have to represent Fifth Madam? For this matter, did Fifth Madam really show up? This. Yuan thought for a while and shook his head. Probably not. At least, Fifth Madam didn't say anything to my father. Humph. Then this Lin Lin acted on her own accord. But Fifth Madam didn't use people to investigate. She is also responsible. Yang Chendong said. This was equivalent to settling the matter. He really didn't expect that such a thing would happen in Crimson City. If not for the fact that he happened to talk to Yuan today and discovered some clues, he was afraid that this matter would only get bigger and bigger, and one day, it would become an unsolvable problem. It seems that some people are used to living a peaceful life. They have forgotten what it's like to lick blood on the blade. If that's the case, then don't blame me for being heartless. After speaking, Yang Chendong raised his hand and slammed down on the stone table in the pavilion. Boom! A thunderous sound suddenly rose. After Yang Chendong's anger soared to the sky and he used his qi, the stone table actually cracked and fell to the ground with a loud bang. Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei, who had just entered the courtyard, saw this scene clearly. Young master! Both of them cried out in surprise and then ran over in big strides. After all, Yang Chendong was still made of flesh and blood. When he slammed down, his hand was bleeding. Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei cried out in pain and shock. They hurriedly shouted outside and arranged for the military doctor to bandage the wound. At the same time, both of them looked at Yuan angrily. Don't blame Yuan. It has nothing to do with him. Since you're here, listen to what Yuan has to say. Tell me your thoughts later. Yang Chendong's voice was very calm. He then waved his hand and went to find the military doctor, including his wound. Yang Chendong didn't doubt Yuan's words because some things could be found out after an investigation. If he was lying, then even his father, Yu Qian, couldn't protect him for framing Fifth Madam. After leaving the courtyard and finding the military doctor, Yang Chendong returned to the backyard after bandaging his hand. He saw Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei standing there with flushed faces. Beside them was Yuan, who was trembling with fear. He lowered his head and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Chapter 727. Are you trying to scare Yuan? Let me tell you, this has nothing to do with him. He is the hero. Needless to say, Yang Chendong knew that the two of them must have gotten angry in front of Yuan. Otherwise, they wouldn't be like this. This subordinate doesn't dare. Yuan did see Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei getting angry just now. It was as if they wanted to eat someone, which really gave him a fright. Alright, Yuan, you don't have to be afraid. You have contributed to this matter. How about this, you go take a walk on the streets first and familiarize yourself with the situation in the beginning city. Then, write a city management report for me to read. We'll talk about the construction of the beginning city when the time comes. You can go now. With a smile on his face, Yang Chendong said to Yuan with a pleasant expression. Yuan naturally nodded and agreed. He excused himself and resigned. After there was no one else around, Yang Chendong's expression turned cold again. Tell me, what do the two of you think? Kill. Kill all these sinners. Yes, not only do we have to kill them all, but we also have to hold a public trial to clarify their crimes. We have to let all the officials in the Crimson City know what the consequences of doing wrong are. Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei expressed their opinions one after another. After listening to Yuan explain everything from the beginning to the end, they were really angry. They didn't expect that while they were fighting for their lives in front of them, the people behind them would be like this. They even felt that their efforts were not worth it. Yes, some people have to be killed. The public trial also has to be held, but the evidence still has to be found first. Crimson City can't be in chaos because of this. It has to develop normally and healthily. Yang Chendong also said as if he had made a decision. Although Yangxia was developing rapidly now, in fact, everything was based on Crimson City. For example, the two provinces of Vietnam and Laos, the development of the beginning city, the expansion of the army, and the improvement of combat power all required a lot of money as a foundation. With money, it was naturally easier to do things. Without money, it was not an exaggeration to say that it was difficult to do anything. For the development of Crimson City, Yang Chendong put in a lot of effort. Not only did he share the fruits of his labor, but he also increased the salaries of the officials to ensure that they could work without any worries. But now it seemed the human heart could never be satisfied. He originally thought that everyone would be fine, but since there were still problems, he had no choice but to change his strategy. And this was the result of these people asking for it. It seems that I have to rectify my work style. Check it out and immediately send a message to Yang San. Directly ask him what he does as the chief of security and whether he still wants to work. If he doesn't want to work anymore, arrange for him to go to Crimson City to farm. Don't say that I didn't take care of him. Give him 50 mu of land, which is enough for his family to retire now and in the future. Then send a message to Yang Wu, scold him and ask him to cooperate with Yang San's next work. Send a message to the first madam, ask her to lecture the fifth madam, tell her that when I'm not around, she has to take care of the maids under her. Send a message to Shen Yu, scold him, as a person in his position, he has to do his job. If he can't do it, then he should just resign. Send a message to Luan Xiaoyu, with her as the leader, let them carry out a rectification operation, including the military. Yang Chendong issued a series of orders. Tiger's mane and Beta Persei's expressions also became extremely solemn. They knew that this time, the sixth young master was really angry. He was so angry that he wanted to reshuffle the cards in Crimson City. The orders were issued one by one. The two of them were afraid of forgetting something, so they had already taken out a pen and paper and began to write it down. Not long after, the two of them turned around and went straight to the telegraph room. It could be imagined that there would be a lot of work to be done. After arranging everything, Yang Chendong became relaxed. He walked towards the military supplies that were delivered. This time, there were a lot of commercial goods. He wanted to carry out commercial activities in the first city, so he also wanted to build a commercial street here. Reality told him that he couldn't put all his eggs in one basket. He still had to make multiple preparations. It would be best if the city below could be self-sufficient. In this way, even if there was a problem in one of the links, it would not affect the overall situation. In the following time, Yang Chendong found Yu Mian. The two of them began to walk through the streets and alleys to plan the future construction of the first city. At this time, several fast boats were heading towards Crimson City from the sea. In the cabin, Yang San, who had a fierce face, was among them. Ever since he received the telegram, he rushed to the nearby dock from the Great Ming Dynasty. Along the way, he had a gloomy face. The fast boat that belonged to the security bureau had already been arranged. After he boarded the boat, he went straight to Crimson City. The telegram was in Yang San's hands. He had already read it countless times. However, every time he read it, his heart would ache. Especially when he saw that he was given 50 mu of land to retire in, he felt a burst of shame. With his indestructible brotherly relationship with Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei, he sent several telegrams back and finally figured out what had happened. He also finally knew why the sixth young master was so angry. Chen Shuquan, you've caused me a lot of trouble. Next, you'll never be able to make a comeback. Sitting in the cabin, Yang San said fiercely in his heart. The work of the Security Bureau had always been very effective. Because of this, he had received countless praises from the sixth young master. After a long time, he was a little numb. He even had the idea that the work of the Security Bureau was very easy to do. No matter who was arranged to take up the post, there shouldn't be any problems. Yang San was careless, or rather, he was blinded by victory. He really didn't think about it. The Security Bureau's achievements today were naturally inseparable from their efforts. However, the more important reason was that Yang Chendong had invested a lot of money in this. The money that the Security Bureau spent in a year alone was more than the annual national taxes of Baiming or Southern Ming. This was still referring to the current situation. The territory wasn't that big, and there weren't many areas that needed to be controlled. As it continued to develop, this money would only be spent more and more. It was precisely with this money as a guarantee that the Security Bureau could get more information and information. It was hateful that Yang San hadn't paid attention to this before, so when he used people again, he didn't pay so much attention to the inspection. For example, Chen Shuquan was also one of the old people when the Security Bureau was first established. His actual ability was very ordinary. It was precisely because he had to be taken care of that he was arranged to be a director in Crimson City. After all, the situation there was the best. As long as he didn't take the initiative to look for trouble, not only was the work easy, it was also easy to achieve results. Yes, the results were out now. Even the sixth young master was alarmed, and he was even scolded because of it. Just based on this, he couldn't tolerate it. Yang San would definitely not show mercy to this kind of person who spoiled the pot of soup with a piece of radish *t. After such a big incident, Yang San was almost sent home to be a farmer. If this matter couldn't be resolved, he was afraid that this time, he really wouldn't be able to report back. Has the Security Bureau's operation team set off? Yang San thought about some of the things that he needed to do when he arrived at Crimson City and thought that he needed reliable people. He looked at Che Chao and asked. Che Chao was a supervisor under the Security Bureau. He was very capable, but because he was still too young and wasn't in the first batch to enter the Security Bureau, he didn't have enough qualifications. Therefore, he had been staying by Yang San's side to gain experience. This time, he brought Che Chao over to solve Chen Shuquan's problem better and faster. At the same time, he also wanted to take the opportunity to see if this person had the ability to succeed Yang Shuquan's position, and if there were any problems with his character. After Chen Shuquan's incident, Yang San started to pay attention to the character of his subordinates. Reality had already proven that if a person was unreliable, the stronger their ability, the more likely they would become a black sheep. Yang San would definitely not make the same mistake twice. Chief, the operation team has transferred 200 people over. They are all safe and reliable, and they don't have any contact with each other. This time, they were ordered to rush to Crimson City from various places and won't leak any information. It's just that when they enter Crimson City's pier, it might be a little troublesome. The person who spoke was Che Chao. He had delicate features and looked very young. Don't worry, when the time comes, you will stay at the pier and be in charge of receiving them. I will give you my token. Yang San said without the slightest emotion in his eyes. This was also the appearance he often maintained in front of his subordinates. Perhaps only in this way, people couldn't see his true thoughts. With Yang San's token, entering the strictly guarded Crimson City's pier would naturally be incomparably smooth. Che Chao quickly agreed and then shut his mouth. Until now, he still didn't know why he suddenly returned to Crimson City, but his intuition told him that there must be some secret mission because if there was a shortage of manpower, there was a Security Bureau branch in Crimson City, and there were quite a number of people there. However, not informing them seemed to indicate a lot of problems. After Yang San asked these questions, he fell back into a state of meditation. He was already planning his every move after entering Crimson City. This time, he didn't want to rely on others. He wanted to personally investigate Chen Shuquan's problem. If everything was like what the sixth young master said in the telegram, he would solve it according to the family law and cut off this malignant tumor of the Security Bureau with his own hands. Crimson City. It was still incomparably bustling. Even when the sky was dark, the main streets were already brightly lit. In the Great Ming Dynasty, kerosene lamps were still used, and the palace ministers only used candles. Just this point alone was many times better than before. As the citizens of Crimson City, they were also the first to enjoy the benefits of modern electrical industry. Meanwhile, in a courtyard that was known as the Street of Light, some people were doing shady things. Chapter 728. In a secret room, there were only 2 people sitting inside. There was tea and some snacks on the table. Brother Chen, this time Yuan went over there. Who knows what he might say? I have to say that you're still too careful. If you did as I said, you should just kill him. Wouldn't that solve the problem once and for all? A slender, handsome man with extremely thin lips took the lead to speak up. This person was Yang Taizhu. With a father like Yang Shan and a good appearance, he was blessed by the heavens. It could be said that the heavens treated him well. As long as he behaved himself, he was destined to have a good life. Unfortunately, his ambition was too big, so big that it was beyond his ability. It was only a matter of time before he was destroyed. Sitting opposite Yang Taizhu was an ordinary-looking man. Even if such a person walked on the street, he wouldn't attract anyone's attention because he looked too ordinary. His height was ordinary, his facial features were ordinary, and there was nothing special about him. Such a person was suitable for an organization like the Security Bureau. No matter what, he didn't stand out. He was Chen Shuquan, the director of the Security Bureau in Crimson City. No. Chen Shuquan spoke, Yuan absolutely can't be killed. Not to mention that his father is Yu Qian. If something happens to him, it's impossible that no one will come to investigate. When the higher-ups call for this person, if we do this, wouldn't that be exposing ourselves? Yang Taizhu also knew that killing Yuan at this time was a little too far-fetched, but for some reason, he had a faint worry in his heart. Ordinary people didn't dare to casually talk about him, but this person had a father who was more powerful than him. Once he saw that person, he really couldn't predict what he would say. Sigh, it's too late to say anything now. I hope he'll be honest and not talk nonsense. Although Yang Taizhu was saying words of comfort, his face was still nervous. Chen Shuquan's ordinary face chuckled and said, Brother Yang, you don't have to be too worried. Yuan isn't that stupid. Saying anything about us won't do him any good. Besides, he has no evidence of our crimes in his hands. Besides, although he has gone to the north, it is still unknown whether he will be able to see that person, or whether he will have the opportunity to meet him alone. Even if he dares to say anything, our Security Bureau will be the first to receive the news. At least until now, I haven't received any orders. You don't have to worry. Yes. With Brother Chen here, I am naturally not worried. Yang Taizhu chuckled. Then, as if he had thought of something, he asked, by the way, Brother Chen, do you think the Security Bureau will secretly arrange for other people to come to Crimson City? I don't think so, Chen Shuquan said confidently. The director has a good relationship with me. He won't suspect me easily. If he really has any thoughts, he should ask me first. Even if he sends someone to investigate, he should inform me. Even if you don't inform me, my men are watching the docks day and night. It will be as difficult as ascending to the heavens for anyone who wants to get to the docks without being noticed. Chen Shuquan was indeed very confident. He was equally confident in his relationship with Yang San. Logically speaking, he was right. If it was just an ordinary person who complained, Yang San would really inform him beforehand. After all, suspecting a subordinate for no reason would only make the other brothers bitterly disappointed. But he forgot one thing. It depended on who was the one who complained. What if it was Yang Chendong who gave the order? Then it wouldn't be a complaint, but 100% execution of the order. If Yang Chendong gave the order, Yang San would definitely attract great attention. Not only that, but he would also have to do a good job. Even if there was no problem, he must provide evidence. Under such circumstances, how could Yang San inform Chen Shuquan about it? At this moment, it could only be said that Chen Shuquan was too confident, so confident that he was a little arrogant. It was a pity that no matter if it was Chen Shuquan or Yang Taizhu, they didn't think too much about it. They only thought that even though Yang Chendong was formidable, to the extent of having an incomparable status in the entire Yang faction, in all of Crimson City, a person was a person, he wasn't a god, how could he possibly care about everything? Furthermore, they didn't do anything to betray Yang Xie. They were just using their power and status to earn more money. Was there anything wrong with that? Which dynasty, which family didn't use this opportunity to develop? What they did wasn't a big deal, so it wouldn't attract Yang Chendong's attention. Yu Mian's matter seemed to have come to an end here. Following that, the two of them talked about the Yuan family. The Yuan family was a special existence in the entire Crimson City. The Yang family only had a total of 4 people, but these 4 people all held high positions and held different positions and influence in different industries. Especially their daughter, Yuan Xiaoyu. When she reached the age, she would become the 6th madam. How could such a family not be illustrious? In Crimson City, anyone with ambition would have the idea of getting close to the other party. Because once they obtained the friendship of the other party, no matter what they did in the future, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Yang Taizhu had been thinking about this recently. Considering the current situation of the Yuan family, he was powerless against Yuan Qi and Yuan Qi's mother, Zhou Hua. These two had power and status, and were busy with work every day. Outsiders simply didn't have the time to come into contact with them. As for his daughter, Yuan Xiaoyu, her identity meant that no one would dare to have any ideas about her. Even Yang Taizhu couldn't, and even his father, Yang Shan, didn't dare to touch her. After thinking about it, there was only one Yuan Shaochen. This person was placed in an important position and had already become the governor of Lao province at a young age. His future was limitless. Most importantly, he had a fatal flaw, and that was that he was young, and he still didn't have a wife. Although Yuan Shaochen had already married 2 concubines in order to appease the hearts of the nobles in Lao Lao, and also in order to give birth to the Yuan family, he didn't have a wife. In the eyes of others, that was the high and mighty position, and only then was he recognized by the outside world as a member of the Yuan family. Currently, Yang Taizhu and Chen Shuquan were discussing the matter of finding a wife for Yuan Xiaoyu. They had already thought about it. As long as this wife was one of their own, then if anything critical happened in the future, this person would play an absolutely crucial role. This was equivalent to not only establishing a relationship with the 5th madam, but also joining forces with the 6th madam's family. At that time, as long as the 2 pillow winds blew, and the one above loosened her mouth, even if there was a huge matter, it could be suppressed. We have to hurry up with the matter of finding someone. He's not young anymore, and finding a wife is only a matter of time. If it wasn't for that statement that the wife of a high-ranking official must be a Han, I'm afraid that there would already be arrangements and we wouldn't have a chance. Yang Taizhu thought about this matter and reminded Che Chao, who was sitting opposite him. Brother Yang, don't worry, I have already arranged for the security bureau to search the city. It's just that your requirements are a bit too high. You need to be young and beautiful, and you also need to have a clean background. The most important thing is that you listen to us. This kind of search is somewhat contradictory, so it dragged on for a few days. While Che Chao was complaining, Ong Tieju's eyes were already wide open. The person must be beautiful, otherwise Yuan Shaochen might not be able to take a fancy to her. Her background must also be clean. Do you think that when the Yuan family is looking for a wife, they won't let people investigate? As for listening to us, this is even more important. We won't be kind enough to make a wedding dress for others. The person we find must be helpful to us. Yang Taizhu didn't relent, and Chen Shuquan could only sigh and nod. Okay, I'll continue to arrange for people to search. By the way, the latest batch of goods should be out of the cabin. When will you give me a definite letter? I'll start to arrange it. Well, it'll be soon. It'll be in 3 days at the new dock. I've already arranged everything that needs to be arranged. When the time comes, all you need to do is to send people from the security bureau to temporarily seal off the dock for 4 hours. Then, everything will be ready. Chen Shuquan nodded when he heard this. That's easy, it's not the first time we've done such a thing. Ha ha ha. The two looked at each other at this moment and smiled. The so-called status and power were all transient, only the gold and silver in their hands were real. As long as they had money, where couldn't they be happy and carefree? The two were still secretly plotting here, and from time to time, their laughter could be heard, which was a kind of imagination for the future. But what they didn't know was that while they were talking, the director of the security bureau, Wang San, had already arrived at the new dock on a fast boat without anyone noticing. He was stopped by the security bureau of the Crimson City, who were guarding here day and night. After Yang San led Che Chao and dozens of people off the fast boat, he took out the pass issued by the security bureau, and Leng Feng, who was guarding the dock, allowed them to pass according to the regulations. But soon, 4 secret agents of the security bureau surrounded them. "Wait, you said that you have a pass from the security bureau, but why haven't we heard about this? Take it out and let us have a look." 4 men dressed like commoners walked over. Then, they looked at Yang San's group of dozens of people with arrogant looks on their faces. "Who do you think you are?" Che Chao stepped forward. For a small fry like this, there was no need for the director to come out personally. The people of the security bureau were used to doing whatever they wanted. Suddenly, they saw someone who was more arrogant than them. The 4 of them looked at each other, then laughed. "Yo, I didn't know that you're so brave. Do you know who we are? Let me tell you, have you heard of the security bureau? You actually want to enter the city under our banner, then you have to go through us first." Chapter 729. The leader had a smug look on his face. In fact, he was also one of Director Yang Shuchuan's most valued subordinates, Dong Hui. Usually, he was in charge of the entry and exit of the docks. When he said this, he intentionally glanced at Leng Feng, who was on duty. He was basically telling Che Chao and the others that if they didn't want to be captured by Leng Feng, they had to be more obedient. Usually, he would scare others, but this time, he was intimidated by Dong Hui's words. Che Chao smiled but didn't reply. He only turned his head to look at Director Yang San, obviously asking for instructions. "Don't make a big deal out of it. Take them down first." Yang San's position meant that he was incomparably decisive when it came to doing things. He really wasn't in the mood to explain anything to a few small fries. As soon as Yang San spoke, the people around him immediately moved. They moved like lightning and restrained 3 of them. Only Dong Hui's skills were not bad. He actually dodged them. After jumping 3 meters away, he suddenly shouted at Leng Feng, who was on duty, "Come quickly, there's a spy here." As soon as he shouted, the Leng Feng over there moved. As elites, they had long been paying attention to what was happening here. The appearance of Yang San's group was already very eye-catching. It was difficult for dozens of men not to attract attention wherever they went. However, they had the security bureau's credentials. They belonged to 2 different departments, so they had no choice but to let them go. When they saw Dong Hui, who was also from the security bureau, stop them, they thought that it was indeed an internal matter of the security bureau, so they didn't care. However, Dong Hui's sudden shout made them feel that something was wrong, so they swarmed over. The entire squad of Leng Feng only had a few seconds to pull out their guns, then surrounded Yang San and the others. "Put your hands on your heads and squat down. Tell us your true identities, or we'll shoot." The black muzzles were fixed on Yang San and the others. Che Chao first stood in front of Yang San, using his body as a human shield, then said, "We're all on the same side, don't misunderstand." "Who's on the same side as you? You keep saying that you're from the security bureau, but why didn't we receive any orders? You want to play the role of a spy from the security bureau? Your performance is still lacking." Dong Hui jumped out, accusing Che Chao and the others of having a problem with their identities. Che Chao's identity was known to many of the Leng Feng patrolling the area, who often appeared at the docks. Now that he said this, of course, everyone believed him and not Yang San and the others. Che Chao's group, Dong Hui's accusation, everyone had their own opinions. If this continued, the situation would only get worse. Seeing that the situation was about to get out of control, Yang San finally stood up and said, "All of you, shut up." As Yang San spoke, he took out an officer's certificate and handed it to a Class 1 sergeant, Ling Feng. "This is my certificate. It's enough to prove my identity. If you still don't believe me, send someone to the palace with this and find Yang Wu. He will verify everything." Leng of Ling Feng's Leng, the Leng's SSS, it's. Seeing that it was a green military ID, squad leader Ling Feng took it without any hesitation. He opened it and saw the words Yang San, Director of the Security Bureau, Senior Colonel, written on it. The rank of colonel was also the highest in the mercenary army at that time. Other than Yang Chendong, the 1st Division Commander of the Army, Ling Song, and the 1st Division Commander of the Navy, Gao Xiong, were only at the same rank. However, a senior colonel had appeared in front of him. Ling Feng's expression changed as he looked at Yang San. Speaking of which, if Yang San's military certificate showed that he was a major, or even a lieutenant colonel, it wouldn't have aroused Ling Feng's suspicions. However, the senior colonel was too eye-catching. It gave people a surreal feeling. If that's the case, I'll need to send someone to the palace with this document. I hope you can understand. Class Monitor Ling Feng didn't dare to make a decision at the moment, so he decided to do as the other party said. After all, he knew Yang Wu. Yang Wu would come to the docks to check on things when he had nothing to do. "Sure, but I have a request. No one here is allowed to leave. Also, what happened here must not be spread out before Yang Wu arrives." Yang San nodded. He could understand the other party's actions. They were also doing things according to the rules, but he wouldn't allow others to ruin his big plan. "All right." Class Monitor Ling Feng was also very straightforward. After making a promise to Yang San, he sent the vice squad leader out and told him to ride a bicycle to the palace to see Yang Wu. Ling Feng didn't speak to him. Instead, after looking at the document, his attitude changed greatly. In Dong Hui's eyes, all of this gave him a bad feeling. The other party claimed to be from the Security Bureau, but he had never seen them before. Moreover, judging from Ling Feng's attitude towards them, they seemed to be of a very high rank. Could it be that the other party was his superior? When he thought about how the Security Bureau mostly communicated through a single line, such a possibility existed, his expression became somewhat ugly. The mission that Director Chen Shuquan had given him was to watch here and not allow strangers to come ashore. If there were any, he had to report it. For the sake of his duty, he prepared to leave quietly. But just as he took a step forward, Yang San's voice rang out, "You are very smart and know how to see the situation. It's just that you followed the wrong person. If you can turn over a new leaf, you can be considered a promising talent." He didn't think that his actions would be seen by others. At this moment, Dong Hui knew that he couldn't leave, so he could only turn his head and chuckle. Then, he stood there and waited. He was following orders, and what he did was in accordance with the rules. There was really no need to be afraid of others. Both parties waited here. In less than an hour, the sound of bicycle bells rang out in the distance. Following that, Yang Wu led a group of Ling Feng and appeared here. Even though it was night and the lights at the pier weren't very bright, Yang San still recognized at a glance that this time, it wasn't only Yang Wu who came. The division commander of the army's 1st Division, Ling Song, also appeared with him. Yang Wu was naturally dressed casually, while Ling Song was indeed wearing a senior colonel's military uniform. The 2 bars and 4 fours were extremely dazzling under the light. Seeing that the division commander had arrived, the platoon commander at the pier immediately stood at attention and saluted. Ling Song stopped the bicycle and casually bowed to the soldiers of the Ling Feng. He strode over to Yang San with a smile on his face and said, "Chief Yang, why didn't you say anything before coming?" This is a surprise attack, isn't it? Seeing that not only did the division commander know Yang San, but his attitude was also so warm, the platoon commander at the side naturally retreated to the side. At this moment, Dong Hui's expression also turned ugly. It was obvious that he had made a mistake this time. It seemed that not only was the other party one of his men, but his position was also quite high. Yang San returned the military salute to Ling Song, but there was no smile on his face. After the salute, he said to Che Chao, "Restrain these 4 people, I want to interrogate them later." After making some simple arrangements, Yang San looked at Ling Song and glanced at Yang Wu. He only said one sentence, "Young master is very angry this time." With just one sentence, Yang Wu, who was incomparably famous in Crimson Nest City, who was called Yang Wu Yi, immediately lowered his head. Just one sentence was enough to show that the young master was dissatisfied with him. As one of the first 5 servants of the Yang family, they were different from the others. Others might have to rely on military merits to be promoted, but their status rose along with Yang Xie's continuous growth. If one had to describe it, they were the same as the eunuchs by the emperor's side. They only needed to serve Yang Chendong well. It could be said that a single sentence determined their future and life. Now that the master was angry, it meant that Yang Wu didn't do his job well. Yang Wu felt very ashamed. Seeing Yang Wu lower his head, Yang San didn't say anything else. Instead, he looked at Ling Song and said, "Young master is also very dissatisfied with your work. Crimson City is Yang Xie's foundation, yet such a big thing happened. You didn't notice it, didn't report it, and didn't solve it. This time, you lost points. Yes, I will reflect." Ling Song also lowered his head, looking like he had done something wrong and was very regretful. Logically speaking, with his position in the military, Ling Song was the 1st Regiment commander of the army, the 1st Division commander of the army. Other than Yang Chendong, very few people could suppress him, not even Yang San. However, the problem was that Yang San came as an imperial envoy to solve the problem. His position was completely different. He came as a representative of the 6th young master. What he said was also instructed by the 6th young master. Other than admitting his mistake, he could only cooperate. There is no use in reflecting. The young master wants to see results. I hope that you can redeem yourselves and cooperate with my work. If you can't even do this well, I can only report the truth to the young master. When the time comes, if your positions change, don't blame me. Yang San didn't want to have any deep contact with Ling Song. Although the other party was also in a high position, he was very clear about his own identity. He was a servant of the Yang family, one of the young master's people. He only served the young master and didn't need to care about other people's feelings. Moreover, as the head of the security bureau, if he had too much contact with important members of the military, in the eyes of others, it was inevitable that they would have other thoughts. If that was the case, he couldn't imagine what the result would be. Yang San's official words fell into Ling Song's ears. He didn't even dare to have any thoughts of objecting. Yes, Ling Feng of the army will definitely cooperate. We will definitely cooperate. Very good. That was to lock up Ling Feng in this class first. It's not that they did anything wrong, but this is an important matter. We can't be careless in the slightest. My arrival is still a secret, and definitely can't be spread. Understand? Yang San was satisfied with Ling Song's attitude. He took this opportunity to give his first order after coming ashore. Chapter 730. Understood. Ling Song nodded, then called over an adjutant beside him. He whispered a few words, and someone immediately went to implement this matter. Just as Ling Song finished making the arrangements, Yang San spoke again. From today onwards, the dock will look the same as usual on the surface, but in fact, any personnel and goods entering or leaving the dock will need my permission to go out to sea. In order not to alert the enemy, you can make a move at sea. In short, the dock must be safe and sound. This matter will require Division Commander Leng's attention. As for the matters at sea, I will visit Division Commander Gao Xiong and explain it to him. Good, good. There are no problems on my side. I will personally arrange for people to guard here. Absolutely nothing will happen. Leng Song patted his chest and promised. Thank you for your hard work. Everyone, do what you are supposed to do. Later, write down everything you know about Yang Taizhu and Chen Shuquan on a piece of paper and have someone send it to me. I want to know more about them. Yang San's business-like face gave off a huge psychological pressure. After saying this, Yang San turned and walked over to Dong Hui and the other three. After arranging the external affairs, it was time to deal with the internal affairs of the Security Bureau. At this time, Dong Hui was no longer as lively as before. Instead, he had a face full of respect and worship. From Che Chao's mouth, he finally knew who he was facing just now. It was actually the boss of the Security Bureau. This made him excited, but also a little afraid. He was excited because he had worshipped the bureau chief for a long time. Now that he could finally see his idol at such a close distance, his heartbeat had already sped up countless times. He was afraid because he had stopped the other party and even almost made a move on him. He didn't know what kind of punishment he would receive for doing something wrong. With these feelings of apprehension, Dong Hui knelt on the ground with a plop the moment Yang San strode into the duty room at the side of the dock. At this moment, he only had one thought, and that was to do his best to make up for what he had done wrong. Yang San boldly sat down on a chair in the duty room. He looked at Dong Hui, who was kneeling on the floor and didn't even dare to raise his head, and said, I heard that you are Chen Shuquan's trusted aide. Have you ever participated in his matters? He thought that the director would reprimand him for his actions just now, but he didn't expect that the director was talking about something else. After a moment of hesitation, Dong Hui immediately shook his head and said, I'm from the Security Bureau. Usually, I only come into contact with Director Chen for work matters, such as guarding the docks and keeping an eye on all suspicious people. As for Director Chen's private affairs, I have no right to participate, nor will I participate. With just a few words, Dong Hui had already made his position clear. That was, he was only Chen Shuquan's subordinate. The reason why he was chosen as Chen Shuquan's confidant was because of his ability. As for personal friendship, there was really nothing to it. This was also one of the rules of the Security Bureau. There was only work between superiors and subordinates, and there was no personal relationship between them. This way, it was possible to avoid any feelings between the two parties and make them emotional during work. When Yang San heard Dong Hui's words, he nodded in satisfaction. He was not worried that this person would dare to lie to him. The internal rules of the Security Bureau were very strict. If he deceived his superior, it would be difficult for him to die even if he wanted to. Moreover, there were some things that he only needed to send someone to investigate and he could come to a conclusion. Dong Hui should know this. In this way, Dong Hui should not be involved in Chen Shuquan's affairs much. From this point of view, this person could still be used. If he performed well, it was not impossible to put him in an important position in the future. He thought that Che Chao was going to replace Chen Shuquan's position, but he was a newcomer and couldn't sort out many relationships for a while. If he had the help of a local snake like Dong Hui, then the progress of the work would definitely speed up. Yang San had an idea in his mind. When he looked at Dong Hui, who was kneeling on the ground, he was no longer as cold and ruthless as before when he spoke. Dong Hui, I believe what you just said for the time being, but you should also know that if you lie to me, what will the consequences be? Yes, your subordinate knows, so your subordinate will never dare to lie to the director. Dong Hui hurriedly kowtowed to the ground. At this moment, he just wanted to dig out his heart to show the director that he really didn't participate in some of Chen Shuquan's specific affairs. In fact, it was not that Dong Hui didn't want to, but that Chen Shuquan was being careful. Since it was a secret, of course, the fewer people who knew, the better. Besides, once the matter was known by his subordinates, if one of them contacted the headquarters and reported the matter to the director, wouldn't he be shooting himself in the foot? Yang San also thought about this problem, so he initially ruled out the possibility that Dong Hui was involved in the smuggling incident. Even if the other party didn't have this motive and condition, Yang San could say something openly. Very well, I hope you haven't participated. If so, your opportunity to make a contribution will come. To tell you the truth, this time, the director came in person to solve some of Chen Shuquan's personal problems. If there is no accident, he can no longer be competent for the position of the director of the Crimson City Security Bureau. There are still a lot of things to do next, and even the entire Crimson City Security Bureau will undergo a big reshuffle. If you perform well, you can still stay and be entrusted with important tasks. As for where to go, you can make your own choice. What choice was there? One was heaven, the other was hell. Dong Hui didn't even want to think about it more. He immediately said, "Director, please rest assured, I will perform well and actively cooperate. Raise your head." Since he was going to continue to use Dong Hui, and in order not to alert the enemy and arouse Chen Shuquan's suspicion, Yang San decided to add more weight to Dong Hui and give him a good reminder. Hearing this, Dong Hui raised his head and saw Yang San glaring at him. "Remember, if you dare to have any selfish motives or ruin things, I promise you that you will suffer a fate worse than death. Your family and relatives will suffer the same fate, understand?" "Understood, understood." Dong Hui was really frightened by this gaze, but after raising his head, he immediately lowered it again, trembling all over. After convincing Dong Hui, or putting enough pressure on him, Yang San walked out of the dock's duty room. He looked at Che Chao, who was guarding the door, and said, "There shouldn't be any problems with this person, but you still need to send someone to check on him. If you're sure there's no problem, use him well. He should be one of your capable assistants in the future." "Yes, Director," subordinate understands. Che Chao's expression didn't change, and then began to call people to investigate Dong Hui's situation. At the same time, he also wanted to interrogate the other 3 Security Bureau agents to get first-hand information. Yang San came to Crimson City. Although he was still discovered, he managed to salvage the situation in time. Furthermore, when he found Yang Wu, Ling Song happened to be there as well. With the help of the number 1 person in the army, the matter of him arriving at the dock was suppressed. No one reported, and even the people guarding the dock were pressured by Yang San's power and chose to follow. As the director of Crimson City Security Bureau, Chen Shuquan didn't know anything. He still did what he was supposed to do, preparing for another smuggling operation in 3 days. Yang Taizhu went to the palace more frequently these 2 days. Of course, with his status, he could not enter the inner palace. He could only meet his wife, Lin Lin, who he spent a lot of effort to catch up with, in the outer palace. He took the opportunity to get information from her, wanting to see if the palace was any different than usual. Since it was Yang Chendong's personal order, all the actions were naturally concealed. Not to mention that Lin Lin was only a servant girl that the 5th Madam fancied. Even the 5th Madam herself didn't know that Yang San came to Crimson City to investigate. After hugging Lin Lin tenderly for a while, Yang Taizhu left the palace with a satisfied face. He didn't find anything wrong, so he decided to do everything according to plan. He thought that after this matter was done, he would have a large sum of money. In the long run, his Yang family would be rich enough to rival a country. At that time, even if there was a possibility of the matter being exposed, he would just leave Crimson City. After he had enough money, even if he formed a team, building a country wouldn't be a problem. Yang Taizhu was sometimes a little arrogant. Since Yang Chendong could do it from scratch, why couldn't he do it with so much money? Nobles, generals, and ministers, it was better to have guts. Doing too much injustice leads to one's own destruction. This sentence was said by the ancients, and the truth also proved the authenticity and reliability of this sentence. 3 days later, when the time came to 9:30 p.m., when the docks began to return to silence, Director Chen Shuquan appeared on time. Just like the previous times when he smuggled goods, he still used the name of the security bureau, saying that he wanted to secretly transport a batch of goods out to sea. With this name, when he brought 60 to 70 carriages of goods all the way to the new docks, no one dared to check. The green light all the way let the goods be sent to the long-prepared cargo ship. While the goods were being loaded, Director Chen Shuquan took out a box of Aries brand cigarettes from his pocket. He took out a stick and put it in his mouth, then took out another stick and handed it to the head of the security bureau, Dong Hui. It had to be said that cigarettes could not only reduce stress and loneliness, but also play a strong role in communication. The cigarette was lit, and the relationship between Chen Shuquan and Dong Hui seemed to be a lot closer at this moment. Dong Hui, did anything happen at the docks during this time? When he said this, Chen Shuquan's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he could see through Dong Hui's heart. Chapter 731. Nothing happened. Everything is normal, Yi Zichen said. Dong Hui said with a smile, but his heart was beating like a drum. After all, Chen Shuquan was his superior, and he really had no confidence in lying in front of his superior. Fortunately, he was very smart and did not dwell on this matter. Instead, he took the initiative to change the topic and asked, "Director, are these things to be given to the security bureau personnel outside the island?" "There are a lot of these things." Chen Shuquan, who was still smiling, immediately changed his expression and said seriously, "Have you forgotten the confidentiality rules? Don't ask what you shouldn't ask, don't say what you shouldn't say. How can you know these things with your status? Alright, you must be tired these days. Go home and have a good rest, there's no need for you here." The sudden coldness caused Dong Hui to pretend to be scared. He nodded his head repeatedly and then left. Looking at his back, Chen Shuquan's heart was already filled with killing intent. His subordinate was curious about this batch of goods. This was not a good sign, and it was best to kill the other party once and for all. Dong Hui did not know that Chen Shuquan had the intention to kill him. In fact, even if he knew, he would not be afraid. Right now, his backer was the bureau chief. As for now, since he was kicked out, of course, he had to inform the higher-ups of the news as soon as possible. This was a good opportunity to perform meritorious deeds. In order not to attract Chen Shuquan's attention, Che Chao did not place one of his own people at the dock. He only did 2 things. The first was to control the sea area outside the new dock in Crimson City, and the second was to wait for Dong Hui's news. One in and one out, both points were controlled. Che Chao firmly believed that unless Yang Taizhu and Chen Shuquan did not do anything, they would not be able to escape the big net he set up. But what he did not expect was that the other party would take the bait so quickly. When Dong Hui found Che Chao with sweat all over his forehead and said that their director Chen Shuquan sent dozens of carts of goods to the dock in the name of the security bureau, Che Chao also stood up from his chair excitedly. He often followed Bureau Chief Yang San, so he naturally knew that the security bureau did not inform him about the goods. In other words, tonight's action was completely decided by Chen Shuquan. Since that was the case, there was no doubt that the goods were smuggled. Very good, Dong Hui. You've made a great contribution this time. How about this, I'll give you 50 elite brothers. You take them to capture the backbone of the city's security bureau. As long as they don't resist, don't kill them. If they resist, you can be heavy-handed. In short, do not allow any important personnel to escape or leave our sight. Do you understand? Dong Hui had already used his actions to prove his position. At this moment, Che Chao could be considered to have completely trusted him. Yes, Please rest assured, Director Che. I'll get it done right away. Dong Hui was also a little excited. This was a heavy responsibility. From this moment on, not only would he be pulled out of the Chen Shuquan case, but he would also enter the list of meritorious people. It could be imagined that his future would be limitless. Che Chao quickly left with the 50 elites of the Security Bureau. Che Chao immediately got up and rushed to the place where Director Yang was resting. Not long after, a large net was spread out, and a series of plans on paper became the final practical action. Yang residence. Ever since Yang Shan was tricked by Yang Chendong, he was sent to Baiming from Nanming. After he was sent to Qiqian City, he was given a large residence. He was appointed as the Minister of Foreign Affairs to formulate foreign policies. Yang Shan had contributed greatly to the peaceful liberation of the first Shang dynasty. As a result, his words carried weight in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It was said that a weak country had no diplomacy. Although Qiqian City didn't establish a country, it was better than one. Powerful military and economic capabilities made it easy for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to work with foreign countries. After establishing the two provinces of Vietnam and Laos, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs set up branches there respectively, and its status became even more extraordinary. In addition, Yang Shan and Qiqian City's mayor, Yu Qian, and the Special Inspector Bureau's director, Shen Yu, used to be officials in the same court. All of these made Yang Shan's position unshakable. As a result, the Yang family could be arrogant when they were outside, as though they were superior to others. As the saying goes, a man whose heart is not content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Yang Shan, who was originally the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights in Nanming, was no longer the same as before. He should be reminiscing about the past. However, there were people who wouldn't forget their past hardships after gaining power. Instead, they believed that everything they had now was because of the hardships and tiredness they had suffered. This was the reward they deserved after putting in so much effort. When a person thought that everything he had was reasonable and deserved, his mentality would naturally change as a result. Yang Shan was the most typical example. With this kind of inflated mentality, the actions of his son, Yang Taizhu, seemed to be a matter of course. The Yang residence was brightly lit. Although it was already past 10 at night, most of the commoners were already asleep. However, it was still as bright as day in the Yang residence. All of this was because another batch of goods had left today. It wouldn't be long before countless taels of silver would be sent to them. With money and power, people would become inflated. Yang Taizhu was the most typical example. At this moment, he wasn't sleeping. Instead, he was very energetic and was playing a game of hide-and-seek with 4 young women. It was different from other people playing this game. If any of the 4 women were caught by Yang Taizhu, they would have to strip naked. This was what rich people did. What they did was to have fun. The 4 women were commoners who had spent money to trade with Nanming. They were originally good-looking, but because their living conditions weren't good, they became sallow and emaciated over time. However, the moment they were chosen by Yang Taizhu in the refugee camp, their lives had already changed. They ate well and wore warm clothes every day. All they needed to do was to become this man's plaything. When a poor person had problems even eating their fill, there was no need to talk about ideals and dignity. For a mouthful of food, the 4 women could only comply and allow Yang Taizhu to humiliate them. They were angry, but they didn't dare to say anything. Even though Yang Chendong had already stipulated that true Han people weren't allowed to buy and sell privately, and they weren't allowed to be forced or restricted. However, when they fell into Yang Tiezhu's hands, how could they have the chance to redress their grievances? Not to mention, even if they wanted to sue, where would they find the right way to do so? In the face of the powerful Yang residents, an existence that could cover the sky with one hand, anyone could only accept their fate. Yang Taizhu was in a good mood. He was in the mood to play tonight. He was prepared to capture all 4 women and sleep with them. Thus, even though it was already late at night, he still didn't have the intention to rest. From time to time, the women's screams and Yang Tieju's satisfied laughter could be heard in the residence. This wasn't the first time such a scene had appeared. The servants in the residence were almost used to it. In any case, as long as the young master was happy, he could do whatever he wanted as the master. How could they dare to interfere? Who could interfere? Dong 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 dong. Suddenly, a loud knocking sound broke this laughter. In the middle of the night in the Yang manor, it was very sudden and unexpected. Who is it? It's already the middle of the night, why are you knocking on the door? The gatekeeper sleepily got up and walked to the main entrance. He opened a small door, wanting to see who was so blind to disturb the Yang residents in the middle of the night. The moment the small door was opened, countless tall figures suddenly appeared in front of him. Then, without waiting for the gatekeeper to do anything or even open his mouth to cry out in alarm, those tall figures rushed in through the small door like fish in the sea. There was also a tall figure who immediately reached out and covered the door's mouth, blocking it completely, making it unable to make any sound. Ugh! The gatekeeper still wanted to struggle, but a clear voice rang in his ears. We are the Cold Vanguard warriors. We are going to search the Yang residence. This place is going to be over soon. You better cooperate. If you still dare to scream, even if we kill you in the next moment, it will be in vain. The people who came were indeed the Cold Vanguard warriors. Their mission was to surround the Yang residence and eliminate all security threats. The order even stated that if anyone resisted, they could use ruthless means to subdue them or even kill them. However, he was just a gatekeeper. They were all here to earn a living. The Cold Vanguard warriors did not really want to kill him. The gatekeeper finally became obedient. After all, when faced with a life-threatening situation, the so-called 1 month's salary was nothing. The Cold Blade warriors walked past them and charged towards various parts of the Yang estate. Long before they came, they had already obtained the blueprint of the Yang mansion. After clearly understanding the situation inside, they could ensure that they could control all the vital points in the shortest amount of time, minimizing the possible resistance and threats that might exist in the Yang mansion to the greatest extent. As more and more Cold Vanguard warriors rushed into the Yang residence, the servants in the residence finally noticed them. Then, there was a series of shouts and screams, causing the entire residence to become chaotic. It also startled Yang Taiju, who was still playing his game. Young master, this is bad. A lot of Cold Vanguard warriors suddenly appeared in the residence and surrounded us. Our armory has also been sealed by them. What should we do? A burly man who looked like a servant rushed into Yang Tieju's courtyard and saw that there were already 2 young ladies dressed in pure white clothes. However, he acted as if he did not see them and spoke with a panicked expression. Chapter 732. Yang Taiju, whose eyes were still covered by a black cloth, instinctively wanted to fly into a rage when he heard that someone had broken into his backyard. This was his private property, and usually, no one was allowed to enter without orders. Otherwise, there would only be one result, death. Just as he was about to flare up, he suddenly froze when he heard that Leng Feng had barged into his residence. Then, with a wave of his right hand, he tore off the black cloth that was covering his eyes and asked with a ferocious look on his face. What happened? Before the servant could answer, more footsteps came from outside the door. Then, a cold front officer wearing a military uniform with the insignia of a colonel on his shoulder appeared in the backyard. Behind him was a dense group of cold front soldiers with calm expressions and sharp eyes. Yang Taiju, who was about to angrily scold the intruder for intruding into his private residence, saw the intruder's face clearly. His original anger instantly disappeared and was replaced by a smile. Huh, so it's Regiment Commander Teng. Please forgive me for not welcoming you when you've come to visit. The intruder was Teng Shan, the 1st Regiment commander of the Cold Front Army. Due to his seniority and fearlessness in battle, he was deeply trusted by Yang Chendong. Even in the entire Qiqian city, there were not many people who could make him lower his head. Normally, even his father, Yang Shan, who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time, would show him some respect. Seeing that it was this person who appeared in his residence, although Yang Taizhu was furious, he still didn't lose his temper. Teng Shan didn't immediately answer Yang Tiezhu's question. He only glanced behind Yang Taizhu. When he saw that 2 of the 4 women were only wearing a thin layer of green gauze while the other 2 were already clean, he frowned slightly. The 4 of you should immediately find clothes and put them on. It's really immoral to be like this. The 4 ladies were already frightened by the cold blade warriors who rushed in. When they heard Teng Shan's words, it was as if they had heard the sound of nature. They hurriedly retreated to look for clothes, but before that, they still looked at Yang Taizhu with pleading eyes. This person was their master. If he didn't say anything, they wouldn't dare to act rashly. Even though their current clothes were very embarrassing and they had already abandoned their dignity, they still stood there foolishly after a long time of getting used to it. All right, go and put on your clothes. Yang Taizhu forced a smile and said to the 4 women. Only then did the 4 beautiful figures quickly disappear. When Yang Taizhu was left standing there alone, he said to Teng Shan in a fawning tone, Regiment Commander Teng, I don't know what made you so angry. If there's anything I can do for you, I will definitely do my best. How about this? It's really tiring for the brothers to carry out a mission so late at night. Why don't you all receive 10 silvers as compensation? Yang Taizhu said as he observed the changes in Teng Shan. He was not too flustered in his heart. Firstly, his background was deep enough. His father was in the residence and he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs. His wife, Lin Lin, was also in the palace serving the 5th Madam. She was his biggest trump card. If something happened to him, she would definitely not sit back and do nothing. Secondly, he was confident that no one could blackmail him. This was also why he was very confident in Chen Shuquan, the director of the Security Bureau. All along, the Security Bureau had been a unified system. Even the military had no right to question or investigate what they did in Crimson City. Of course, it was not that he did not think that something might have happened to Chen Shuquan, but he quickly denied it in his heart. Chen Shuquan was the director of the Security Bureau in Crimson City. He was the number 1 existence. Who could investigate him? Who had the authority to investigate him? No matter what, even if something really happened to Chen Shuquan and he was investigated. What did that have to do with him? He was a good citizen. Although he had been working with Chen Shuquan, he did not leave any evidence. Even if something happened to the other party, there was no evidence to blame him. Not to mention, as long as something didn't happen immediately, with his father and Madam's relationship, after some interaction, he would definitely be able to turn big things into small ones. Yang Taizhu was very confident. When he looked at Teng Shan, he was no longer as afraid as before. He even openly mentioned the matter of bribery. From this, it could be seen how bold he was. Hearing that Yang Taizhu wanted to give the Lengfeng soldiers money for their hard work, Teng Shan chuckled. 10 silvers for a soldier, young Master Yang is really generous. These words were said with a smile, so Yang Taizhu was unable to see the other party's true intentions. He could only smile apologetically and continue. It's nothing, it's nothing. The Lengfeng soldiers have sacrificed so much for the entire city and island. It's only right for me to contribute a little. It's only right. It's only right? Then I ask young Master Yang to cooperate with us again and make a trip with us. Teng Shan still had a smile on his face as he spoke. At the same time, he was disgusted by Yang Tiezhu's hypocrisy. Since he was able to enter the Yang residence in the middle of the night, he naturally received orders and knew the cause and effect of the matter. Although he did not know the details, his intuition told him that Yang Taizhu was finished this time. Even the Yang family would not be any better. Since that was the case, why should he be polite to a person who was destined to be finished? Seeing that Teng Shan suddenly turned hostile and wanted to take him away, Ong Tieju's face completely changed. Ah! What are you doing? What are you doing? Commander Teng, are you mistaken? I'm one of your own people. I'm also an officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What authority do you have to take me away? Do you know the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Relying on his father's relationship, Yang Taizhu had indeed obtained a position in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He was not in charge of anything. To put it bluntly, he was just in charge of an official position. Now, this amulet had finally come into play. Seeing that Yang Taizhu did not cooperate and even use the name of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Teng Shan did not show the slightest bit of surprise. Instead, he smiled and said, "Young Master Yang, please cooperate with us. As for your identity as an officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we will give you a satisfactory answer very soon. Come, take him away." Teng Shan didn't want to waste any more time. After giving the order, two cold vanguard warriors with big waists walked out from behind him and rushed to Yang Tieju's front. They lowered their heads and gave Yang Taizhu a firm press. Yang Taizhu, whose body was restrained and head was pressed down, did not give up resisting. He still shouted with all his might, let me go, I'm an officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You can't do this to me, you can't." His shouts went from his courtyard to the main entrance of the Yang residence. Just as Teng Shan and the rest appeared here, a thunderous voice rang in their ears. "What are you doing?" "Ah!" Hearing this voice, Yang Taizhu, who was pressed down, seemed to have found his backbone. He raised his head abruptly and saw that the person who spoke was his father, Yang Shan. He immediately shouted, "Father, save me, father, save me. My son, don't worry. With your father here, no one can take you away from the residence. I have already arranged for someone to inform your wife. I believe she will not allow anyone to do this." Yang Shan's mountain-like voice rang out once again. At this moment, he displayed sufficient calmness. Although Yang Shan did not participate in some of Yang Tieju's matters, it was impossible to say that he did not know anything. His son had done a lot of things under his name. He had more or less heard about it, but he did not interfere. Firstly, it was because he loved his son dearly. Secondly, his son would give him a lot of gold and silver every time. He used this to unite many officials and colleagues, which allowed him to do his work more easily. Not only did Yang Shan not feel ashamed of his son's actions, he even thought that this was a manifestation of his ability. After all, when he was an official in the Great Ming, who knew how many officials would take advantage of the situation to do things that crossed the line? When everyone did this, there was no need to criticize others. Therefore, he also thought that it was normal for the same thing to happen in Qiqian City. Not to mention, his son was very scheming. Before doing anything, he first married the servant girl that the fifth madam had an important position in. This was equivalent to finding a strong ally and backer. His son was so careful in doing things, so he would only be more at ease. However, tonight, Ling Feng suddenly entered the residence and indeed caught him off guard. However, he was not very frightened. Other than sending someone to inform Lin Lin, this daughter-in-law with a strong background, he only needed to stall for time. For him, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, this was not a big deal. After saying this confidently, Yang Shan looked at Teng Shan and said sternly, "Regiment Commander Teng, my son is an official in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He's a cadre. He's an official who has been appointed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What happened to him should be investigated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so it is better not to trouble you." The Ministry of Foreign Affairs was clearly Yang Shan treated Yang Tieju's matter as an internal matter of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so it should be handled and solved by them. Yang Shan was confident, but he thought about it carefully. Since Tingshan had appeared here, how could it be possible that he did not have anything to rely on? Facing Yang Shan, this high official, Tingshan's tone was very calm, but he was also very calm. He said in a businesslike manner, "I'm sorry, Minister Yang. I received the order to take young Master Yang away. As for what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs wants to do, that is your business. Please do not affect my work. I am also talking about work. I represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs." Yang Shan did not have the slightest intention of backing down. He also shouted in a thunderous voice. It was really difficult for him. He was not young, but he seemed to be very confident. Chapter 733. This time, Yang Shan wanted to use his seniority to oppress the other party. It was true that Yang Chendong had his eyes on Tingshan, but he was only a regiment commander. Facing the Minister of Foreign Affairs, there was still a lot of pressure. Just as the situation became tense, a thunderous voice suddenly came from behind the Lingfeng. "I'm sorry, Minister Yang, but you can no longer represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs." As the voice fell, a group of people walked out from behind the crowd. When they saw this group of people, all the Lingfeng involuntarily took a step back and showed a very respectful expression. This was because the three people who came were of high status. Two of them were of high status. They were Yang Wu, Ling Song, and Ma Dali. There was no need to say much about Yang Wu. When Yang Chendong was in Crimson City, he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs representative. His status was even higher than City Lord Yu Qian. Ling Song was the commander of the army's 1st Division and was known as the #1 person in the army. There were even rumors that the 1st Division would become the 1st Army. When that time came, if there were no accidents, the position of 1st Army commander would fall on him. He was also the superior of all the Lingfeng in the city. His every move was naturally very eye-catching. The third person was Ma Dali. Although his name was very domineering and he looked very burly, he had an official status. He was the first deputy minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Someone once said that the people in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs should be eloquent and look kind. Only then would it be helpful for both sides to negotiate. A brawny man like Ma Dali shouldn't be in such a team. However, when everyone thought that it was inappropriate, Yang Chendong did the opposite. He appointed this person as the first deputy minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and gave the authority to Yang Shan. The reason why he did this was because what Yang Xia needed now was a strong Minister of Foreign Affairs. Ma Dali fit this role perfectly. For example, the shout that Yang Shan could no longer represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was made by Ma Dali. When the three of them appeared, the pressure on Tingshan was greatly reduced. Yang Taizhu also lowered his head. He knew very well that this situation was not something his father could handle. Perhaps when Madame arrived, she could represent 5th Madame to deal with these people. Yang Taizhu placed his hopes on his wife. Yang Shan's expression changed rapidly at this moment, especially when he saw Ma Dali appear. His eyelids twitched violently, and his intuition told him that things were not going well. However, for the sake of his son's safety, he had to hold on until his daughter-in-law arrived. Hee, so it's 5th Master Yang and Division Master Leng. Your presence brings light to my humble abode, but why didn't you inform me in advance so that I could go out and welcome you? Yang Shan was indeed someone who often dealt with people. His expression quickly returned to normal. He smiled at Yang Wu and Ling Song, as if they were old friends who had a very good relationship. On the other hand, Ma Dali, who was standing beside the two of them, turned a blind eye. Ma Dali was only his assistant. Choosing to ignore him at this moment showed how domineering he was. Yang Shan wanted to use this to tell everyone that those who were not as high as him and those who were not as high as him should not speak anymore. He would not listen either. Both Yang Wu and Ling Song understood Yang Shan's little scheme. Perhaps they did not have this kind of experience before, nor had they experienced such a secret struggle. However, they had been in a high position for so many years. Even if they had not seen a pig being slaughtered, how could they not have eaten pork? In such a big environment, it was not something that could be avoided just because one wanted to. Some things had long been accustomed to. Not only did they understand Yang Shan's little scheme, but they also knew very well in their hearts. Ling Song smiled when he saw that Yang Shan had made his move. Then, he said, "It's just to catch a person. How could we alarm Division Master Yang?" When Ling Song said this, Yang Shan also smiled. Anyone could tell that this was not a hearty laugh, but a sneer. Division Master Ling makes it sound so easy. This time, the person you want to catch is my son. As a parent, I think I have the right to know what is going on. However, I wonder if Division Master Ling can tell me what crime my son committed. Do you have any evidence? Yang Shan asked in return. His voice did not contain any emotional fluctuations, but anyone could tell that he was on the verge of exploding. It seemed that if a reasonable answer was not given, he would stop them from taking the person away. Who was Yang Shan? During the reign of Ren Xuanji, he became an official of the Great Ming Dynasty. Later, when Zhu Qizhen took over, he was already the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights. He had also experienced the Tumu Revolution. In the end, he went to the southern Ming Dynasty under the protection and help of Yang Chendong. Such an experienced person who was used to deceiving and deceiving each other had long since mastered the art of calmness. He wouldn't be so easily angered. However, he still pretended to be like this. It was tantamount to showing his determination to protect his son's safety. At the same time, he was stalling for time and waiting for his daughter-in-law to arrive. He was also testing Ling Song's confidence. He wanted to see what kind of evidence the other party had and what he needed to do if he wanted to protect his son. Yang Shan stood up. He had single-handedly carried Yang Wu and Ling Song, the two great mountains who had come to the manor. His boldness was enough, and his courage was admirable. If it was some ordinary small matter, he would have to give face and let him go if he personally stood up. What was pitiful was that this time, the order was personally given by the sixth young master. No matter how determined Yang Shan was, he could not overturn the situation this time. The reason why they did not use thunderous methods was because the batch of things that had been sent to the sea had not been shipped back. They could not be completely sure what was inside. Without any definite information, Ling Song was not in a hurry to make the final move. Instead, he chuckled and said, "This is strange. Doesn't your son know what he has done? Why is he asking me about it? Commander Ling, I did not do anything. You are accusing me wrongly. It is nothing more than your military being envious of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You are accusing me wrongly." Although Yang Taizhu, who was being escorted, was restrained, his mouth was not sealed. He could still speak. Seeing that his father was exonerating him, he took the opportunity to shout and shout. Of course, no one knew how true these words were. Most importantly, Yang Wu was here. If he heard some of these words, would he think that this matter was originally due to the conflict between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the military department, and that was why this happened? After Yang Tiezhu's accusation, many of the cold front soldiers' faces turned ugly. Teng Shan, for example, wished he could give Yang Shan a tight slap across the face and let him know the consequences of slandering the military and its soldiers. On the other hand, Ling Song was not in a hurry. He just stood there with his hands behind his back and smiled. No one knew better than him that this time, he took action completely because Director Yang San personally came and arranged it. He was just following orders. Why would he be afraid of being accused or even framed? Yang Shan and Yang Tiezhu's counterattack made the originally tense Yang family courtyard fall into silence. Suddenly, everyone stopped talking. They just looked at each other like they were waiting for something. Yes. Everyone was waiting. The young father and son were waiting for Lin Lin's arrival. As long as she came, she could represent the fifth young mistress to express her attitude. She was one of the matriarchs. When the master was not around, no one could shake the position of the matriarch. She would have the effect of changing the situation. Yang Wu and Leng Song were waiting for the news from the new dock. As long as the cargo ship was transported back, Chen Shuquan would be caught and betrayed Yang Taizhu. Then, they could start the next step of the operation. At that time, no one would be able to stop them. While waiting like this, the 3 cargo ships on the new dock of Qiqian City began to dock again. The dozens of large carts of goods on them were also transported back to the new dock one by one. Director Chen Shuquan, who was about to leave, was stunned by the scene in front of him. According to his habit, every time the goods were transported out, he would stay at the new dock for a while. After confirming that there were no other problems, he would leave. After all, it was the goods of the Security Bureau. As the director, it was reasonable for him to stay a little longer. Of course, he would stay a little longer because Chen Shuquan was cautious. He was worried that someone would have designs on the cargo ships of the Security Bureau. If he did not stay here, what would he do if something went wrong? And it was this long stop that allowed him to see a good show. The 3 cargo ships that had just set out sailed back, and even the Cold Front Navy came back with the ships. The ships were still the same ships, and the escorts were still the same people. The appearance of this scene made Chen Shuquan's heart skip a beat. He had a hunch that something bad was going to happen. He pretended to be calm and walked towards the 3 ships of goods that were docked at the dock. He was still far away, but his shout could be heard. What happened? Why are the goods being transported back? Director Chen, there was an order from above. We don't know what's going on. A Cold Front platoon leader in charge of escorting the goods said with a salute. The platoon leader really didn't know what happened. Due to the difference in status between the two of them, he was telling the truth. Chen Shuquan saw the platoon leader's respect. He seemed to see hope. His face changed, and he said sternly. Order? Who gave the order? Do you know that this is what the Security Bureau wants? There are a lot of things involved. How can they stop just like that? Send the goods out immediately. As for the order, I will take it for you. I promise that you will not be punished. Chapter 734. Chen Shuquan's thinking was simple. As long as the goods were sent out of the sea and handed over to the people arranged by Yang Taizhu overseas, there would be no evidence. At that time, he could just say that he didn't know anything. Without evidence, no one could casually convict him. No matter what, Chen Shuquan was still the head of the Security Bureau's office in Crimson City. His words were still very authoritative. Hearing this, platoon leader Leng Feng hesitated. After all, offending the head of the Security Bureau was not a wise move. If he really wanted to target him, how could he, a small platoon leader, resist? Platoon leader Leng Feng was still in a mental struggle, hesitating about what to do. On the new pier, another group of people had appeared. The leader was a young man with delicate features. The moment he appeared, he laughed heartily. Brother Chen, you have such great authority. Leng Feng doesn't belong to our Security Bureau, yet you can order him around as you please. You're really amazing. Who is it? Who is secretly making sarcastic remarks? Come out if you have the ability. As soon as the sarcastic remarks were heard, Chen Shuquan's face darkened. He suddenly turned his head, looking like he was looking for someone to punish. Chen Shuquan did indeed have such confidence. Director Yang Sen was not in Crimson City, so he was the highest-ranking person in charge of the Security Bureau here. From a certain point of view, he could exist side by side with military chiefs like Leng Song and Gao Xiong. Even if the people from the political department came, he could still wrestle with them. Due to the confidentiality rules, the Security Bureau was independent of any system and was directly under the 6th Young Master's jurisdiction. In other words, even if Yang Wuyi appeared here, if he was unyielding, he could still face him head-on. Of course, all of this was limited to the other party not receiving the 6th Young Master's orders. Thinking about how he dared to face Yang Wuyi, what a proud existence he was. It was no wonder that when he heard people talking about him like this, he immediately shouted like a plucked rooster. Ha ha ha, Brother Chen, I haven't been hiding in the dark. I've been standing here all this time. It's just that your standards are too high and you didn't notice me. As the laughter continued, Che Chao led a group of 20 members of the Security Bureau's operations team that had been transferred from various places to Qinshuquan. A group of people strode over. Because it was dark, they couldn't see clearly, but Qinshuquan's expression had already begun to change. Since the other party was so fearless, his identity must not be simple. Moreover, the goods were right in front of him. How was he going to explain himself under such conclusive evidence? Qinshuquan's brain spun rapidly as he formulated various countermeasures in his mind. At this time, Che Chao had already strode in front of him. With the help of the street lights on the pier, they could finally see each other clearly. At this moment, Qinshuquan's face was filled with shock. Che Chao, how could it be you? Why can't it be me? Che Chao, who was far calmer than Qinshuquan, had a smile on his face as he slowly asked, Brother Chen, why are you so nervous? Could it be that my appearance has delayed your good fortune? When he suddenly saw Che Chao, Qinshuquan was indeed shocked. He could not understand why the other party would appear in Crimson City, and why he did not receive any news at all. However, he soon calmed down. After all, the other party's level was lower than his. Even so, what was there to be afraid of? Perhaps the other party had come to Crimson City to settle some personal matters, or perhaps to visit family and friends. At this point, it must be said that the majority of the staff of the Security Bureau lived in the dark, and the mental pressure was immense. Therefore, every year, they would have a normal holiday to return to society and be an ordinary person. Otherwise, they would be driven crazy. Qinshuquan thought that Che Chao was probably on vacation, and he just happened to appear in Crimson City, which was why this scene was happening in front of him. It could be said that he was comforting himself, but in short, Qinshuquan quickly calmed down and strode towards Che Chao. As he walked, he said, Brother Che, it's not that I want to nag you, but since you've come to Crimson City, you should at least greet me so that I can do my part as a host, right? Qinshuquan took the initiative to get close to Che Chao, and Che Chao also smiled and replied, Hey, I know that Brother Chen is busy, so I didn't come to disturb you. Please don't blame me. Che Chao being so polite made Qinshuquan feel more at ease, and the smile on his face grew wider. What do you mean by disturb? You don't treat me as one of your own. Just based on this point, you should be punished. How about this, I'll punish you with 3 cups of wine tonight. Let's go, I'll find a place to welcome you. As he spoke, Qinshuquan's large hand had already landed on Che Chao's shoulder. Those who didn't know would think that their relationship was very good. Che Chao, who was originally cupping his fists and apologizing, was waiting for Qinshuquan's hand to land on his shoulder. The smile on his face suddenly disappeared, and was replaced by a cold expression. His large hand suddenly grabbed Qinshuquan's arm from his chest, and then with a twist, he pulled Qinshuquan into his embrace, and a Type 54 firearm was pressed against Qinshuquan's temple. I'm sorry, Director Chen, I have important matters to attend to, so I don't have the time to drink with you. The sudden change in the situation made Qinshuquan's subordinates, who were watching everything with a smile, stunned. Then, under the conditioned reflex of their years of training, a few of them reached into their waists, pulled out the knives on their waist, and shouted. What are you doing? Release Director Chen immediately. Don't be agitated, let's observe the situation first. Dong Hui, who was mixed in the crowd, played a role at this time. He stretched out his arms, stopping everyone from being impulsive, and gave a few of his subordinates a look. Under Dong Hui's lead, a few of his subordinates also joined the ranks of persuading everyone not to be impulsive, causing the originally tense atmosphere to be suppressed. At this time, Chen Shuquan was in Che Chao's embrace, facing his subordinates. Seeing Dong Hui's performance, his eyes seemed to be about to pop out. But at this time, he also knew that this was not the time to fight with Dong Hui. His opponent was still Che Chao. Old brother Che, what are you doing? Do you know that everything you're doing is offending your superiors? Do you know, according to our internal family law, if you do this, not only will you die, your family won't get any benefits? Let me tell you, let me go immediately, and for the sake of our previous relationship, I can pretend that nothing happened. Chen Shuquan was still suppressing people with his power, trying to make Che Chao stop. But now that he had the initiative, how could Che Chao easily let go? He looked at the back of Chen Shuquan's head with a smile, as if he was looking at an idiot. Director Chen, things have already turned out like this, don't you know how to repent? Tell me, where are these things going to be shipped? Of course it's to the Security Bureau. Chen Shuquan gritted his teeth and said. Security Bureau? Why don't I know about it? Che Chao asked again. Your rank is not high enough, of course you don't know. Let me tell you, this is the director's arrangement, and it's classified as a top secret. It's already a mistake for you to know this now, do you understand? Relying on his higher rank, Chen Shuquan spouted nonsense. Now, as long as he could get through this, he would find a random crime to take down Che Chao. In short, he would not give Che Chao a chance to ask Yang San, he wanted to silence him. Chen Shuquan was still thinking about what to do once he had the initiative, when a very familiar voice came from behind him. I don't understand. I've never given such an order, but I don't know who you heard it from. Of course you don't understand, this is the bureau. Chen Shuquan was about to say something with an arrogant look, but suddenly he was stunned. This voice was so familiar, it sounded like the bureau. Directors. Che Chao seemed to know what he was thinking, he loosened his grip slightly, allowing him to turn his head. When he turned his head, he saw Yang San in front of him with a fierce face. Immediately, Chen Shuquan's legs turned to jelly, and he could no longer stand. With a plop, he sat on the ground. The main culprit had appeared, and Chen Shuquan knew that everything was over. The irrefutable evidence was right in front of him. He was afraid that no matter what excuse he found, it would be useless. When he thought of the director's means and the family law of the Security Bureau, it was really difficult for him to die even if he wanted to. His face turned pale at this moment. Bureau. Director, I was wrong, Yang Taizhu forced me to do everything, I was too greedy. Yang San didn't say another word, so Chen Shuquan confessed everything. Now, he no longer hoped for a future, or even to live, he only hoped for a quick death and not to implicate his family. He was very grateful. Chen Shuquan was so cooperative, and Yang San stood there and listened coldly. After listening to Chen Shuquan, he sighed softly. Chen Shuquan, you've been in the Security Bureau for a long time, and your name is on the 6th Young Masters list. Do you know that your future is limitless? Do you know how many generations your descendants will be proud of having you as their ancestor? But now, because of your wrong decision, everything is gone. Yang San could not say whether he was lamenting or feeling pity for Chen Shuquan, he shook his head several times. It was obvious that this result made him a little sad. After all, it was not easy to cultivate a talent, and they had known each other for so many years, it was impossible to say that they had no feelings for each other. Now that he had made a mistake, a big mistake, it also meant the end of their friendship, it was no wonder that Yang San was a little sad. Yes, I know that I have done something wrong this time. I am willing to confess everything, and I am willing to testify, I only hope that the director will not implicate my family, and give me a quick death. Chen Shuquan could feel the sadness in Yang San's heart. How could he feel good in his heart? But since he had embarked on this path, there was no turning back. At this time, he could only use the last trace of the director's feelings for him to make his own request. Chapter 735. Cooperate well, I promise I won't implicate your family. Yang San knew what Chen Shuquan was worried about. Perhaps this was the only thing he could do for the other party. He patted the other party's shoulder lightly. Che Chao, I'll leave this to you. He will cooperate well with you and tell you everything we want to know. Director, don't worry, I'll get the confession immediately. Che Chao patted his chest and promised. There was a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. The chance to make a big contribution had come. As long as he did this well, he could get promoted as he wished and become the new director of the Crimson City Security Bureau. One was eager to make a contribution, the other was eager to atone for his sins. The two of them got together, and the process of taking notes and testimonies went very smoothly. In just half an hour, a clear file appeared in front of Yang San, who was in the duty room. After taking a quick look, Yang San sighed softly. Send someone to inform Yang Wu and the palace. It's time to reel in the net. Also, get the action team to move out. All the officials related to this matter must not be let off. Arrest them all. Yes, I'll do it immediately. Che Chao replied and turned to leave. This night, Crimson City was destined to not be peaceful. Palace. This palace occupied a large area and was built magnificently. It seemed to be an independent existence from Crimson City. Although the master was rarely here, no one dared to disrespect this place. So much so that anyone who walked out of this place could issue orders, and they all had a higher status than anyone else. Lin Lin, this woman with average looks and beauty was at most 30%, was one of the people who often went in and out of the palace. With her eloquence that could make a dead person come back to life, she gained the trust of the fifth Madame Su Monaire and became the representative of the fifth Madame. Originally, Su Monaire had a personal maid named Xiao Yun. However, this maid was a little lazy. In the end, the purchasing of the necessities of the palace fell to Lin Lin, who had been by Su Monaire's side since she came to Crimson City. Lin Lin was a person who knew how to conduct herself. Not only did she know how to say nice things to make Su Monaire laugh heartily, she also had a very good relationship with the other maids. In this regard, her husband, Yang Taizhu, was also very willing to spend money. With money, she could naturally bribe many people to do things for her. It was precisely because Lin Lin usually paid attention to the people around her that she was able to rope in more people. When the Yang mansion was surrounded, Yang Shan arranged for his trusted steward to leave through the secret passage in the mansion and come to the palace. Soon, a servant girl who had received favor handed the news to Lin Lin. Lin Lin, who suddenly received the news, was shocked. Although she didn't know what her husband, Yang Taizhu, did for a living, seeing how generous he usually was, she could guess that the money might not be so honorable. Because of this matter, she had hesitated and considered. However, when she thought of how his father was the dignified Minister of Foreign Affairs and was the person favored by the sixth young master, it was reasonable for such a family to have some unexpected wealth. She didn't think too much about it. However, now it seemed that the matter was a little serious. Once something happened to her husband, she would have no backing and no income. How could she unite more maids in the future? This would shake her foundation. She had no choice but to save him. Lin Lin decided to take action. However, before leaving the palace, she still had a very important thing to do. That was to first obtain the support of the fifth Madame. Only in this way could she be considered to have the sword of the imperial court. Only then could she do things without fear. Is Madame asleep? Lin Lin came to the room where Su Monaire was resting and asked the maid on duty tonight. Not yet. Sister Lin, is something the matter? The maid on duty had a good relationship with Lin Lin and asked with a smile. I have a small matter to see madam. On the surface, Lin Lin acted as if nothing had happened. As she spoke, she had already walked into the bedroom. When she saw Su Monair sitting in front of the god's mirror removing her makeup, she knelt on the ground without another word. It was just an action without a word, but it gave Xiao Yun a fright. Su Monair, who was sitting there, also saw everything that happened behind her through the divine mirror. She was also shocked. Ling, what happened? Why do you have to be so respectful? It was just like how Yang Chendong asked his subordinates not to kneel for no reason. In the palace, unless it was an important occasion, there was no rule to kneel. Madam, please save Ling, Save the life of my husband's family. With a tear-stained face, Lin Lin looked like an excellent actress at this moment. She spoke as if she had been wronged. What's going on? Stand up and talk. Su Monair's expression became much more serious when she heard this. This maid who was very considerate of her was married to the son of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yang Shan. What exactly happened that even Minister Yang was unable to save her? Su Monair, who had already thought of the wording, started to distort the truth. She said that Minister Yang had long made people jealous because of his high position and power. She said that the Yang family had a relationship with Madame again, causing some people to be jealous. She said that it was not a matter of a day for everyone to overthrow Minister Yang and so on. In the end, Lin Lin said bluntly, Madam, the downfall of my husband's family is a small matter, but it will affect Madam's reputation. What's more, there will be people who want to take the opportunity to attack the sixth young master's prestige. This is a big matter. The sixth young master is not in the city all year round, and the development of the city is so prosperous. It's hard to tell what's in a person's heart. Su Monair did not pay much attention to the previous words. Even if it involved herself, she did not pay much attention to it. It was enough for her husband to know what kind of person she was. As for the opinions of others, she did not care at all. Because without her husband, she was probably a dead person now. It was hateful that she believed the one-sided words of a villain and even had delusions of killing her husband. Now that she thought about it, she really regretted it. All of this made Su Monair extremely grateful to Yang Chendong. She would not allow anyone to threaten her husband's safety, even if her reputation was damaged. Now that she heard that someone actually had such an idea, how could she not be angry? She glared and said, how preposterous. Is it true that because my husband is not around, some people want to indulge in wild fantasies? Yes, madam. This matter is not a small matter. Please make a decision. Seeing that Su Monair had fallen into a trap, Lin Lin was overjoyed and continued to instigate her. Lin Lin was asking what to do next. Should she help the Yang family? In this way, it would be equivalent to indirectly helping her. Su Monair understood the hidden meaning in his words. After thinking for a while, she said, then go and take a look. If they are trying to frame you, then let them investigate seriously. If they really did do it, then even you are not allowed to speak carelessly. Su Monair was still smart. She did not make a conclusion about things that she did not understand. Instead, she wanted to base it on facts. However, how could she know that the starting point of any matter might be good, but in the end, it depended on who was carrying it out. If the person carrying it out was someone who could not distinguish right from wrong, wanting to have a fair decision would become a delusion. Lin Lin was waiting for this sentence. She immediately agreed, stood up, and walked out of the bedroom. At this moment, she was no longer acting like a weak woman just now. Instead, she was filled with pride and confidence. Humph. Since you dare to go against my husband's family, then you can wait to be dealt with. After receiving Su Monair's support, Lin Lin seemed to have changed into a different person. When she walked out of the palace, her expression was filled with confidence. She wanted to use the name of a tiger. What could others do about it? Leading 4 maids, Lin Lin walked in front with large strides. Her arrogant appearance made her look like a master. Along the way, all the maids who met her stopped in their tracks from afar. When they got closer, they lowered their heads and asked questions with a fawning and respectful expression. From afar, she could see the outer gate of the palace. As long as she walked past it, she would reach the outer palace. Although there were many guards there in charge of security, with Lin Lin's status, they did not even have the courage to check. It could be said that once she passed through the gate, she would be free to fly. Lin Lin's face subconsciously revealed a victorious smile. However, at this moment, a light shout sounded behind her. "Are you Lin Lin?" "Wait a moment." Someone suddenly shouted her name behind her. Out of instinct, Lin Lin stopped in her tracks. When she turned around, she saw a group of people coming from afar. She recognized the leader. It was First Madame's personal maid, Xiao Qing. Beside Xiao Qing was the palace's head maid, Tai Jie. Sister Xiao Qing. After seeing that it was the young miss, Lin Lin immediately put away her arrogant expression and showed a very well-behaved appearance. She even intentionally bowed. This was the etiquette that only a servant would show to a master. It was no wonder that Lin Lin was so careful. Although she was valued by the 5th Madame and was considered a superior existence among the maids, she was still nothing in front of Xiao Qing. She was First Madame's favorite and had grown up with First Madame. Putting aside the fact that their relationship had been nurtured since they were young, Xiao Qing's husband, Sun Chuang, was already a battalion officer. Even the 6th young master had taken note of him. It could be said that his future was bright. Normally, such a person could open her own residence and be a mistress. However, she didn't. Instead, she stayed by the eldest madame's side and served her wholeheartedly. Just based on this, which maid in the palace didn't respect her? Which maid dared to give her a hard time? The sudden appearance of little Qing forced Lin Lin to stop her footsteps and stand there with a respectful expression. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.